You're listening to the DC Real Estate Podcast, the podcast where we focus exclusively on all things local to the DMV area. Local investors, local knowledge, local experts. Our journey starts now.
Hey everyone, my name is Russell Brazil. I'm the host of the DC Real Estate Podcast, and I'm an associate broker with Arlo Real Estate.
My name is still Jack Seiden, same as the first three episodes. I am a house flipper in DC, and
I'm Ron Gallagher, and I'm a landlord.
Hey, so first thing we're going to do, we're going to take a few listener questions that we got, and after that, then we're going to talk about some of Ron's other experiences. So the first question we get is from Nicole, and I think she's an agent with BPG Residential. She asked, what is something you know now about real estate that you wish you had known earlier? Yep, go ahead, Jack.
So I think it's really the importance of, first of all, you get just anytime you do something, you get more knowledge of it, and my knowledge of the process of flipping and all that stuff is infinitely more than it used to be, to the point that it's a well-oiled machine. The other thing is the importance of having a good team. When I started, I had a completely different real estate agent, completely different contractor. Even I think my landscaper has changed over. Like, we've changed over everything, and that allows you to hopefully do a couple of things. Get better quality, hopefully better prices. Also, one thing people underestimate, like sometimes when you have a bad agent or a bad contractor, it's not just the money, right? It's a pain in the ass, right? So my life is very easy because I have people who are easy to deal with. I like working with. Every time I see Russell, every time I see my contractor, I'm excited to see them. I'm excited to see me.
And that removes all kinds of stress from your life when you're working with professionals that you actually like.
Yeah. And they happen to be great and they save me money, but frankly, I'd pay a pretty large premium to just like not have to deal with the drama. I'm making enough money at a certain point. When you're making a lot of money, one of the things you want to buy with that is peace of mind. And I'm not worried. My last contractor who I fired mid-project, I just remember like every single day I'd have to go over to the house and make sure things were going smoothly, and he'd have 5 mistakes and I'd have to call him back, and we'd get into, I got into a screaming match with him once. Like, it was bad, and it was like caused me a tremendous amount of stress. And I was, at one point we got in trouble with the city of Tacoma Park because he didn't do the right permits, and it was just a constant, like, I always had to worry, was he going to screw something up, and I was going to have to clean it up. And I don't worry about that anymore. And that's just a huge kind of weight off of my shoulders. So I think the importance of having a team of competent people who you like and who are going to make you look good, and, not the opposite.
What about you, Ron? Anything you wish you'd known earlier in this business?
I mean, I guess it's that I would have done everything sooner. So, I mean, if you look back,
you'd be retired at 30 if you'd done it.
Exactly. But I took a 9-year mini retirement and traveled the world and whatever. So I don't regret doing that. But yeah, I thought about that before. If I would have done, my plan to be financially free a decade earlier, then I would have been retired. So, and people always look back. What's the old real estate joke or whatever? When's the best time to buy? Yesterday. So I think everyone it would look back and say, maybe during the pandemic you didn't pull the trigger on an investment property because you were uncertain about the future. So, but now you look back and now it's 20% higher in price, something to buy something like that. So, it's
the sooner you start, the sooner you can build equity.
Exactly.
The sooner you can build wealth.
And the time value of money is undefeated, right?
Yep.
So I would just say doing everything sooner.
Our next question's from Nick, and he wants to know if you can do an FHA loan on a triplex that is part of a 1031 exchange. And this is pretty simple, actually. So an FHA loan is going to be for an owner-occupied property. And while you could move out and turn it into a rental down the road, you're typically not mixing a 1031 exchange, which is purely investment, into an owner-occupied property.
And people get this wrong sometimes. You can have one FHA loan at a time. So not only has to be owner occupied, you can only have one at a time. So
yeah, I imagine if you would move into a property that you just bought with the 1031 exchange, moving into it would negate the exchange, I would imagine,
right.
And you create tax liability for yourself.
And also, at the extent that you have enough properties you're 1031ing them, you probably have a good amount of equity that you're worried about capital gains. There's kind of no reason to use the FHA loan. I mean, I don't know the specific circumstance, but you would think with someone who has enough equity to bother to do 1031, you're better off going conventional.
Now, our last question we'll go over today. We'll try to keep it not too long in this. This is something we could have an entire episode about. But Kyle asked, and I think I met this Kyle for coffee a few months ago. He wanted to get a detailed play for house hacking. That's something Ron's really good at. And the pros and cons of Baltimore and the pros and cons of DC in doing this. If I'm not mistaken, I think Kyle had ended up buying in Howard County, if I'm not mistaken.
So he split the difference.
Yeah, so he went halfway in between. Definitely. So, I mean, I'll start off. One of the best house hacking strategies you can do is if you can buy a multifamily property. If you can't, if you can do the accessory dwelling unit, that's probably the next best thing. And that's essentially what Ron was doing a couple of years ago.
Right. And then Baltimore versus DC. I mean, if you're just talking about appreciation, it's a simple answer.
Yeah, I mean, prices are going to be much more stagnant in Baltimore, and they're going to be more steadily rising in DC, and that goes for the rents as well.
Exactly.
Baltimore, you're going to get much more cash flow to start, but that rent's going to basically stay static, year in, year out.
That's an interesting question. What do you think the break-even horizon is? It's going to depend greatly. So this is a very broad answer. Between your initial cash flow in Baltimore is going to be higher, but eventually the DC rent growth catches up with it. 5-6 years?
I'd say maybe even half that. 3 years, maybe.
Yeah, people get so obsessed with these cash flow markets, but the truth is, in a very short period of time, you're going to be cash flowing way more money in Montgomery County or DC or anywhere in the DC area than you are in Baltimore, in Cleveland, any of these cash flow markets that don't appreciate on the rent growth.
Yeah, especially if we're talking about DC proper. So rents in Petworth from 2010 to 2020 basically doubled. Renting a row house in 2010 in Petworth cost you about $2,000 a month. By 2020, that number was at $4,000 a month.
So most of your properties were pretty cash flow neutral when you bought them, but you have what do you?
So I'd say they were minimally cash flow positive. Once you factor in repairs and capital expenditures, they were probably about break even.
And now, what do you make?
I've got one property over in Rockville near the high school, and I'm just shy of $2,000 a month cash flow on that.
Yeah, so that's,
and part of that is I did refinance it to get the payment lower, but a lot of that is the rent growth. The rent is $1,300 higher than when I initially bought it.
And that goes back to the first question: what did you learn? Patience is really important in real estate. Patience and discipline. You can get, I've bought houses that I shouldn't have bought, right, on flips that it seemed like there was a lot of profit, or it seemed, right, you discipline and
real estate is a get rich slow scheme, right?
If you try to get rich quick, you'll lose money.
Yeah, if you try to get rich quick, you're going to lose. If you have the patience to stick with it, you're going to make a lot of money, but it takes patience.
Discipline.
So those three, we had tons of actually questions that came in this week. We'll try to get to some of them.
Please
the next
send us
time.
more. We love answering them.
Yeah. And sorry that we are a week late on this episode. We got back from Bigger Pockets conference last week, and
it took us about a week to recover.
Yeah, it took some time to recover from New Orleans.
We went
and
way too long.
Shockingly, none of us got COVID.
I was sickened with not COVID, but with laryngitis. If anyone can hear, I don't know.
Well, from what I remember about Bourbon Street, if you got COVID, it might be one of the better diseases too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you can pick up on Bourbon Street.
Exactly.
We didn't get any of those either.
Yeah.
But if you remember on the last episode, we were talking to Ron about some of the specifics of his properties, what they were renting for. But really what we want to get into today is some of the adversity Ron has overcome in this business. I feel like every bad thing that can happen has happened to Ron. And, he amazingly has just continued to roll with the punches. If what's the worst thing that can happen to a property is probably it burning down, right? Ron has not had just one fire, but he's had multiple fires, which
kind of
is amazing.
It kind of sounds like you're setting them.
Well, it is a great insurance scam. The first fire was a condo that I was trying to sell during the 2008 timeframe.
I was trying to sell it and it burned down.
And then the insurance money was more than I could have possibly gotten for it at the time.
This is definitely okay. Now, the more you say this is definitely an insurance scam.
Blessing in disguise. I was in Argentina at the time, and the condo was in Dallas, Texas. So
did you pay someone to do it?
No, it was actually funny because it was when I got the inspection done on that unit, it was built in the 60s, and it had some old wiring at the switch, like at the light switches. And
did it have aluminum wiring?
I don't know, but I remember
Because that is aluminum wiring is something they were using from about 65 to 75, and it is a fire hazard.
Well, this is probably what it was, because I remember it because the inspector was like, this is a serious problem, and it was serious enough that we were able to go back and get a credit from the seller for like $600 to change the wiring. But of course, I never did. I just pocketed the $600. But the fire didn't start in my. But hold on, the fire didn't start in my unit.
Yeah,
the fire started in a unit that was being used for storage, basically. And
okay, I'm glad you have an alibi. That's good.
But the same, that inspector was right. He's like, one day these little wires are going to get closer and closer, and eventually there's going to be a spark, and it's going to cause a fire. So,
and that in fact happened. I'm curious. I wonder if this apartment building, and you probably have no idea because it's so long ago. I wonder if it also had a Federal Pacific electric panel. It's something we would occasionally see. So Federal Pacific panels are fire hazards because they don't trip when the wires heat up. And then aluminum wiring is also a fire hazard because the wires heat up.
They tend to be more West Coast, though, right?
No, we've got tons of communities here. Basically, most of the city of Columbia has it. Manor Lake in Rockville has it. Strathmore, Belpre, and Silver Spring has it. So certain builders in this area did use it, and so it is prevalent in certain areas. Bowie, Columbia, Silver Spring, and Herndon Reston's where I usually see it the most. But when we find aluminum wiring in conjunction with the Federal Pacific panel,
it's bad.
It's really, really bad. And I actually own. I just sold this property, but I owned a property that had both of those.
Well, to be
things.
clear, it's actually not that bad. You just have to fix it. It's not
Yeah.
like you shouldn't buy the house. It's just you should.
But what happens when
you
you
shouldn't pocket the seller credit.
That although
You
it
should
sounds
address
like
the issue.
it sounds like it works well for you. You got $600 and an insurance payout. So
Everything
it sounds
else-
like it worked out great for you.
So the theme of this adversity podcast should be everything always works out. That's always been my philosophy my entire life. And if you believe that, then things aren't so bad. But I mean,
Good attitude.
But at the time, it does not. I'm in Argentina. I've got my tenant sending me pictures of flames flying out, because I'm thinking, okay, he's like, there's a fire at another unit.
I think like a small kitchen fire.
Yeah, and they're going to put that out, and there might be some smoke damage and whatever, and then the whole complex is engulfed in flames. So,
I mean, this is actually a really good point because I have seen both of these issues in condo buildings, and I've had clients ask me, well, do I get them fixed? And one of the things I always mention, I'm like, well, yeah, you should get it fixed, but
every neighbor
also
has to
be
get them
aware
fixed.
every single unit here
Exactly.
has the same problem.
So it wouldn't have done me any good to change the wiring on it. I made the right choice pocketing that $600.
It seems like the condo
credit.
board should just require that everyone gets them replaced.
I don't know if you ever deal with condo
I know.
boards, they can be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know
and in
they
this
are.
case, it was a really old man that had built that. He was like oil, back in the 80s in Texas, made some money in oil and then got
Cowboy
into
hat.
real estate. And then it was like an 8-unit building, a 12-unit building. And he owned like 7 of it must have been a 12-unit building because he owned like 7 of the units. So he was the condo association. Yeah. He was, he was the majority owner. So whatever he decided kind of went.
So you're in Argentina. This place burns down. Walk us through what are the steps like when your tenant calls you and says your house just burned down?
Well, luckily it was really kind of shocking to me because this guy, my tenant, had a kid, and I flew back from Argentina like a couple months later, and I flew into Dallas. I think I had a layover in Dallas, so I was like, let me rent a car and just go out and see the damage. So there was a fence put up, and I snuck in through the fence and went inside my unit, which the doors were just wide open or whatever. And there's pictures of his kids and his family and whatever. Like, he just abandoned everything, it looked like. He didn't take any keepsakes or whatever. Just like, all right, well, that was a fire. All my belongings are gone. I don't need any. I'll just start totally fresh.
Did he have renter's insurance?
I don't know. I don't know. But he did kind of like a clean break. He never really, said like, I need to be compensated for this. You know what I mean? Like, it's not my fault, obviously, but I think as a tenant, there's a, this,
you think there'd be a natural sort of
like
friction that would take place there.
But luckily was super laid back, and he just kind of was like, all right, I guess I've got to go find another place to live or whatever. And he did that and never heard from him again. And like I said, all of his belongings and everything were still there. So it didn't seem like he was a person that had the personality or the mentality that, this fire was going to destroy his life or whatever.
And obviously you had that same mentality too, because you took it in stride.
Well, I mean, it was, like I said,
I imagine it must have been stressful.
At the time, it was very stressful because I'm in Argentina. There's not a whole lot I can do. I'm getting just kind of like that old man that owns the condo complex. He's not on email. He's not, what am I going to do? Send a letter from airmail from Argentina?
Pigeon carrier.
Right. So, I mean, luckily I had a friend there in Dallas that would go over and kind of check it out for me. And he would run into the daughter of the owner of the building and they would chat and she would feed information back to me. So I got some information, but at the time it was really, really stressful and negative. But insurance companies work at like a snail's pace, I'm learning. So, cause I just had the second fire and we still haven't like communicate. I don't know what the standard is for insurance companies, like responsiveness and customer service, but it's been very minimal, like contact.
So what was the timeline on this first fire?
It was probably months before, probably 3 to 6 months before I got a check. And, I didn't know if that check was coming. I don't know how this stuff all works. And I did not have insurance on my condo because I owned it free and clear. I paid for it in cash with putting a second mortgage on one of my properties in DC. So then properties were super cheap in Texas. So, I could just do a cash out refinance on one of my DC properties and then buy a condo in Dallas, Texas for, with cash. So, but luckily there was a master insurance policy on the condo building, and that was enough to.
So how much did that master insurance policy compensate you?
I think I paid like, if I remember correctly, I paid like somewhere like $70,000 for the condo, and I think I got a check for like $90,000.
I have a great story of a friend who bought some place in Cumberland, Maryland for like 20 grand, 30 grand, and they got the insurance. And I guess at the time it had a small foundation crack. The insurance didn't catch when they issued the policy. Within 6 months, it was so bad the house was totaled. They wrote him a check for 80 grand. He'd bought this house for like 20 or 30, and like more than doubled his money.
Yeah, I think it was just based on like, I had owned it for a couple of years, and it wasn't that they weren't looking at like what the market is doing right now, because this is like I said, it was this 2008 timeframe when I was trying to sell it and I couldn't sell it, and they were looking at cost to rebuild or whatever, materials and stuff to rebuild it.
I gotta tell you, that's amazing that in a falling real estate market, your place burned down and you made more money than what you paid for.
But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Everything always works out. Russell, look, when we were trying to sell my condo earlier this year, and the condo market, you guys are talking about it on this podcast, talking about how the condo market is, kind of dead in DC right now. And it makes sense, high density housing isn't really popular during a global pandemic. But what happened for us? You sold my condo for $15,000 more than we were asking for in not a great hot condo market. So everything always works out.
Yeah, it's amazing that that worked out, and really your trust in me was great there, because I've had plenty of clients, not plenty, but I've had some clients that have not trusted me in what I told them to do, and it worked out not that great for them because they didn't want to listen. You were very receptive to me telling you like, no, let's not drop the price here. Let's just wait. Let's be patient. And then we came up with that great idea that
I don't even know if you want to share this idea because this is too brilliant.
Oh, no one's going to do it anyways.
Okay.
But the condo had
have trust that I think you have, the attitude of the good attitude.
So I think we had the condo listed for about $399 at the time, and it had a separately deeded parking space that we're including in the sale. Well, I came up with the idea to sort of refresh the listing that we were going to separate the, we're going to try to sell them separately. Here's the condo, here's the parking space.
Because we previously couldn't sell it at the 400 combined 400,000, which is that was my target sale price. That's what it was worth in my head, and it was a dead condo market during the pandemic, and it was the beginning of the year, and it was the height of one of the pandemic surges. It was January and February timeframe of 2021.
It was really bad then.
So we were looking at a creative way to sell it, and then Russell had his great idea to
so we listed the condo for $385 and the spot for $30,000.
And then what happens in less than a month? We get 2 full cash offers on both.
We're able
to
sell
negotiation.
It. Yeah. Able to sell it for $415 total when we could not sell it for $400 previously.
Together. Right. Brilliant. So I wind up with $15,000 more than Russell gets me $15,000 more than I thought. I was going to be happy with $400,000 in a dead condo market, in a market that we couldn't sell them together. But then it seems so simple now, but it's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, that worked out incredibly well for us. So let's talk about some of the other really negative experiences. So
sounds like you have like the plague basically in your life.
Yeah.
Fires,
and we're just talking real estate.
Fires,
Ron's had some other bullshit that's not real estate.
I mean,
related
nonstop.
Too.
No, this is a therapy session. Tell us all of your problems in life.
So during the last,
we think it's a real estate podcast. This is really a group therapy.
So during the last 12 months during the pandemic, my car was broken into 3 times, and you could say,
that's DC.
You could say, it's DC, or, it's living in the city or whatever. Or, I go out, so my car is parked in, sketchy neighborhoods at night or whatever. But 2 times it happened when it was just outside my house. One time it happened at I'll tell the story in chronological order. So one time I go out around Thanksgiving during the pandemic, and I'm trying to find my car. And I know where I parked my car, but it's not there. And I'm walking around the neighborhood because, if you ever parked in the city, if you park on one street one night and whatever, and it just becomes kind of a ritual, and then you kind of forget which block you're on. Right. So I'm walking around all the usual spots that I park my car, and I couldn't find it. And then eventually I call the police, and I'm like, hey, is there, like...
It would have been really embarrassing if they've been actually just lost it. It's the block over.
But I looked all over.
No.
I looked all over twice. And then, because day one, I was like, all right, I can't find it. It was starting to get dark. And I'm like, well, I'll just deal with this tomorrow. It's the pandemic. I can't go anywhere anyway. It was during lockdown, whatever. So then I called. Then the next day, after combing the blocks again, I was like, all right, let me call the police, because obviously I was parked in a. Nope, I don't know. It wasn't, but something happened. So then I give my license plate number to the dispatcher on 311 or whatever, and she's like, "Oh, your car was in an accident." And I'm like, "An accident? What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Go to any police station and give them this case number, and then they can print you out a report or whatever." So I'm trying to gather what's going on. Long story short, my car, some Penske rental truck, was turning into an apartment complex, and my car was parked just before the entry driveway to that apartment complex. And he clipped the front of my car, but he clipped it with such force that it put the ass end of my car out into this 1-lane road that I was parked on.
Yeah.
I was blocking traffic. They called the police, and then they had the car towed.
The police never contacted you to say, just so you know, we towed your car?
So fast forward 3 weeks later, I'm at my rental property that I used to live at, and there's a letter, and then hi, your car is at this impound lot.
Oh, yeah.
So I find out that my car is at this impound lot. So I go to the impound. So now already, what's the chances that your car is going to be
totaled,
involved in a no car accident? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just sitting there innocently parked during lockdown on a street, like it has a billion times before. And then, so that's 1 in a million. So now let's add another statistic to it. while so I go to the impound lot, and the car just looks horrible. And
your car doesn't look that great to begin with.
It does not look that great.
Was it having a bad hair day? Didn't have
But
makeup.
think about what my poor car has been through, Russell. I mean, this poor car. My grandmother would have never given it to me if she would have known what was going to happen to this. So
the car is resilient as you are. It's like a good story. The car was as resilient as you are.
The car is resilient. I mean, I drove it up here. I mean, because they were talking about, well, we're just going to have to total it out, and I'm like, I don't want to buy a new car. Like,
yeah, there's always that.
I didn't do anything. I just parked my car on the street.
And there's always like at a certain point, if you're into cars, you have some sentimental attachment, right? You're like, I don't.
It's my grandmother's car.
Yeah,
my dead grandmother gave me that car.
Yeah, like, I don't want to total it out. Just fix it.
Right. So,
is this when the guy broke into it?
Yeah. So then
it's really a community car for the city of DC.
It really is.
It's not really Ron's car.
So then I went to the impound lot for the first time at late in the afternoon, and I'm like, just to check it out. And I was still gathering information at the time, trying to figure out what was going on. And then just see if my car was actually there. You know, I haven't seen my car for 2 weeks. And then so I just was like, well, I really don't know what to do. So I'm just going to go home, regroup, figure out, call auto body shops, I guess, or whatever. So I was like, I'll come back here tomorrow. So I come back to the impound lot the next day, and the impound lot guy greets me, and he's like, I've got bad news. And he's like showing me on his phone this camera footage. He's got barbed wire fencing all around his impound lot. Somehow these guys get into the impound lot. He's showing me the camera footage of them breaking into the impound lot. Since my car was towed into the impound lot, it was locked. So it's
got to be the worst car there.
So it was the only locked car in the impound lot. So they thought maybe it was something of value inside or whatever. So they take a brick, throw it in, they break into my car. So now we're talking about, a 1 in a million event inside it's like Russian nesting dolls. There's another 1 in a million event inside a 1 in a million event. So, it's just very unlikely. And then the third time that my car was broken into was when I was out in DC one night. And then, Russell, I told you about this, but I was out in DC one night. And then the guy, there was... I was coming back up to where my car was parked.
This is when the drug addict broke into it.
Right. And then I could see that the sun wasn't reflecting off the passenger side when I was walking up to the car. So I was like, oh, geez, someone broke into the car again. They smashed the window. So this would be the third time in 12 months that this happened to my car. But again, the one time was in an impound lot with razor wire around, chain link fence. And then this time... as I'm approaching my car, I'm looking into the passenger seat with all the broken glass and everything. And there's a guy sleeping in the driver's side. So the guy breaks into my car, but that was such a taxing event that he had to take a nap.
Yeah.
And slept in my car.
How do you presume to know how taxing it is to break into cars?
Yeah, I don't know. But
then the police come, they get rid of that guy. He's trying to... The police are giving you a hard time.
The police were the worst. I would like to, if I knew their 4 names, I would call them out on this podcast. When we go to court, my focus will not be on the criminal. It'll be on the 4 police officers who were horrible bedside manner. Were making me to be the victim. And
they were victim shaming.
They were victim shaming me. They were making me out to be the bad guy.
What did they think you should have done differently?
Well, I called the guy an inconsiderate asshole, and one of the officers was like, sir, we don't need to talk to him like that. And I'm like, he's getting off easy.
I think you do.
I think most people would take that brick that he used to break into my car and smash his head in with it. I could have done that before the police came.
Is that what you told the police officer?
That's how I could have woke him up. No, I was like, sure, take the criminal side. And he's like, just because he committed a crime doesn't... Oh, we have laugh tracks. He's like, so the officer goes, just because he committed a crime doesn't make him and I'm like, that's the definition of criminal. And so they were like, these are fun. What else do you have?
I've been wanting to use these for a little while.
Well, So anyway, I don't want to belabor these
He's
stories.
going to be in prison thinking, like, it was not even the time. That guy, he may have impacted his life. Like, maybe it's inconsiderateness that he's going to consider next time. May have been a good life lesson for him.
He was the only one on my side, so.
Anyways, let's circle back to the real estate after the.
No, this is so much better. This is so much better.
I mean, it shows you what an interesting life Ron leads and how he just gets by all this bullshit. But let's bring it back to.
This is we're not even halfway done with this. This is like Ron's just getting started.
We've talked about the one fire Ron had. Now let's bring it back to the house in College Park, which I think we went over the numbers on this house
last time. Yeah,
last time. So it was a house we bought under interesting circumstances. It's about $500,000, and we get about $5,000 in rent on it. Just an awesome house that has helped Ron achieve financial freedom. However, he's had multiple issues with the house as well.
I've had a psycho tenant who would tape the electrical sockets with like black electrical tape and thought that, I don't know, whatever, tinfoil hat, whatever people think, when they have some sort of mental disorder. And, so he got off his meds. I don't know what happened. He, at some point, cut the internet line.
Is this the guy who was sending the pictures of pizza to people?
No, that's a totally different psycho tenant. So that's what I'm saying. I have many, many psycho tenants. And so anyway, he eventually, moved out. But it wasn't without a lot of, drama where, Russell, you were involved in the first time because this guy got arrested.
Oh, this was the guy.
Right. So I didn't know whether or not he was like he could never figure out Cozy. Cozy was how I collected rent, now a part of CoStar Apartments.com conglomerate. But back when Cozy was just like one guy that making a website that was like Venmo for landlords, then that's when I used it. And he could never get he didn't have a bank account or whatever. So he could never get that to work. So he'd always Venmo me his rent every month. And then one month he just never Venmoed me the money. And when I was texting him, he never responded. So I'm like, all right, let me do like a little wellness check here. So I tell him, tomorrow in I give him 24-hour notice, but tomorrow I'm going to key into your apartment. And I'm going to, see if, what's going on here, see how, what's happening. And then, all of his stuff was still there and everything inside the apartment. So Russell, you had the idea to check the Maryland criminal case.
Yeah, see if he had been arrested. And he came up, right?
And he was, right. He had been arrested. And then, so I had to search him down. This is a long, long story, but it's just another drama. It's just so much drama, dealing with these tenants. And, it goes, so he was upfront about his criminal past and, it was like in his early 20s or whatever. And I'm a forgiving person. And part of me was like, this is a cautionary tale, I guess, real estate podcast wise. It was the middle of winter and I was still working at the time. I didn't live in this neighborhood. So it was like a 20-30 minute drive after work to go show this apartment. So I'm just like, sure, I'll just give it to the criminal. I'll let the criminal rent it out.
I love how going from Columbia Heights to College Park.
Well, I remember I called myself a long distance landlord once and you laughed at that. But it's a pain in the butt. There are no highways between Washington, D.C., Columbia Heights, inside the inner city of Washington, D.C., and College Park. You have to go through all these little side streets and maybe East-West Highway. And, it's not a convenient drive. It's a pain in the butt to get up there. So, he seemed like a nice enough guy. I'm like, all right, let me rent it out to him. But I think that most criminals have a mental disorder. The guy that broke into my car and slept in it probably has a mental disorder.
That's probably true.
So, I guess the cautionary tale is I'm never renting to a criminal again. And how can you tell?
Well, depending on what the crime is, right? Because I have a feeling, really, marijuana related offense.
Yeah, probably. I probably, yeah. Because
we want someone who had just like possession of marijuana.
I mean, I have to. I even like when I do screenings now, and they have a traffic ticket. I'm like, I don't know.
Well, you definitely would not be renting to me with my history of speeding tickets.
I have been pulled over 7 times, never gotten a ticket.
Nice.
So I don't know. I mean, if you have 2 applications and you have 2 people that are equal, they have a 700 credit score and they're just out of college and they're the same age and everything is equal, and one has a traffic ticket. You know, there was a time when I had 2 girls applying for the same room, and they were equal in every way. Like they were.
Well, you got to have the deciding factor.
So,
right?
the deciding
I would
factor
choose
might
with
be
a speeding ticket, and I'd want to know.
But I would imagine if you had a tenant with a marijuana related offense, I would imagine you wanting to hang out with them.
Yeah, I think you'd be like, yes, please move in and smoke with me.
No, but I don't want. I mean, like just like I don't want my tenants,
you don't want them bothering the other tenants.
I don't want my tenants smoking. Fires happen. You know, like I told my tenants, like I was like delayed on billing back the utilities when the month that the fire happened at College Park, at my College Park property. You know, and it's just like, sorry that I was, a little late billing back the utilities. I, had this fire that I'm dealing with. And I was like, and if you ever wondered why I say no, because some people complain like no candles. I even put it in my, not only is it in the lease, but it's in my ad to rent the rooms. And people are like, I think I know the answer, but why don't you allow candles? Well,
I think I know the answer.
Oh, there's multiple fires at properties.
Right. Fires do happen. I mean, I went to one of my rentals one day, and I was like, it was a tenant that was moving out, and I was like, if you don't mind, I'm going to come over and take pictures of your room so I can, and take a little video tour, so I can, get it rented out. And so he knows I'm coming, and I go over there, and he's gone. He's like, oh yeah, no problem. I'll be at work at that time anyway. So he's gone, and in his room is a lit candle. Like an unattended lit candle. So, fires happen. There are other ways to freshen the air than incense and candles. So, and you can go smoke marijuana and tobacco and whatever out on the front porch. But that's why I put in my lease, no
candles.
Smoking, no flames inside my buildings.
So anyways, let's go back to the College Park house. So obviously, as landlords, we all have tenant problems from time to time.
Although yours sound a lot worse.
Yeah, but what we don't have is 6 feet of water floods in our properties.
Right. So I forgot about, because the fire is the most recent natural disaster that's happened there. I totally forgot about the flood. So
did you piss off some God or some is there something that's like you're cursed?
Well, if you'll indulge me for 2 minutes, I can explain how your life has gone this way. No, I can explain how, because most people would say, peace out, I'm done with this. Yeah. Not only peace out, I'm done with real estate, but peace out, I'm done with life.
Because most of the shit that has happened to you would drive most people out of the landlording business.
I think it would drive. Right? I think I agree with Ron. It would drive me out of life.
Right.
It's like I'm cursed.
Drive you to suicide. Right. Or at least a severe case of paranoia.
Or depression.
Yeah. Because why is all this stuff happening to me?
Just in the mental institution, just shaking, just fire, it's floods, just what happened. I did house hacking. House hacking was a mistake as you're being taken away by people and
But let's go back. Let's go back to the flood because
okay, yeah. So
I remember when you sent me the video of this, I was like, oh my God.
The flood was the first time, maybe in my life, but certainly in my real estate career, where I didn't know what to do. I mean, so tenants tend to over exaggerate everything.
Yes.
I just got a text before I came up here from a tenant. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. And I'm like, and you can only see the first couple of lines, the text message, or the first couple of words.
The shower,
so
has, a small leak. The shower has a small leak in it.
Because based on my thing, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, is that the rest of the text message is going to be, that entire house is burned down. That there's a flood in the basement. It was 6 feet of water, 8 feet of water. So I'm just like, okay, this is going to be crazy. And I open up the entire text message. She's like, the back doorknob is loose, and I can't take the trash out. So,
thank God,
no big deal.
But just and they're just this past weekend, I was at one of the rentals, and the tenant has a portable AC unit in their room, and she's like, can you come, when you come over to the place, can you come and check my portable AC unit? I left for a couple hours and I came back and my entire room was flooded. And so I go over, and the problem was she had never cleaned the filter ever in the back. So the back where the intake is for the air, for the air conditioner, is just covered with like a half an inch of dust. Yeah. And so there's no airflow, and so then it condensates. The system is just freezing up, right? And the leaking is not really leaking. It's the ice melting. It's the condensation melting. So anyway, I was like, just clean this filter and, it'll be fine. But if I could give one piece of advice to my tenants, if you're talking, especially if you're dealing with me, and a lot of them don't know that I've had all these extraordinary circumstances and things happen to me, but don't preface your text message with, "Oh my God," whatever. Just like, I remember at this College Park property, one of the tenants was like, "Initiate flood controls." Like, this is seriously what this text message said. "There's a leak, blah, blah, blah. Come here immediately," whatever. So I'm like, oh my God. So I'm driving up and I'm thinking there's going to be like 8 feet of water or whatever. And then I go up there and the toilet up above needed like a new wax seal. And there's like a tiny little water stain on the ceiling. And I'm like, this was initiate flood protocols or whatever.
You have a flood protocol? What is
I don't know what he was talking about. I don't know what he was talking about.
But you need a flood protocol.
But he was ahead of his time because he was that was just a practice run for when one of the tenants texted me the day of the 8-foot flood, and he was like, "There's some water, the basement's flooded," and I'm like, "Okay, that's going to be just like initiate flood protocol. Like, there's going to be a little bit of water in the basement. We'll
get it dried up.
Yeah, whatever.
But you get there and it is not.
I get there and the stairwell down to the basement is up to like 7/8 of the way up the door. So it's if your average door is 7 feet or whatever, then a little less than 7 feet, then the water was at least 6 feet high. And the entire basement was flooded. So it's like having a swimming pool, which the basement is the entire footprint of the house. So it's like having a swimming pool that's 6 feet deep. That's the amount of water that I had.
This really is biblical. Floods, fires.
And you get there and you have, because I perfectly understand this. I remember you telling me like you just had no clue.
I had no idea what to do. I text my handyman on WhatsApp a little video, a picture of, the 8 feet of water, 6 feet of water, whatever. And I told him, I was like, I don't know what to do. Like and then I had to then my landscape.
And you don't know if you want to touch it because there's there's electricity down there.
Absolutely.
Are you going to get zapped if you touch this water?
Absolutely. Because then the guy who sold me the property, who lives next door, he comes over. Alan comes over and he's got a bucket and I'm like, and some rain boots. And I'm like, "Alan, I don't think we should touch it, And I was like, with a bucket, we're going to be here. I mean, I was like, he was under the assumption that the water was just at the door in the stairwell. He didn't think that the water was all the way behind the door in the basement. But I'm like, no, that water is all the way back there in the basement. Well, so like I said, everything always works out. So during this, my landscaper calls. And my landscaper
he's been eaten by some sort of animal at this point, is what I'm
assuming. No.
He's like some cheetah.
No, see, my landscaper
his arm off.
No, see, my landscaper had the solution. So my landscaper loves to talk. He could never. It was such a simple thing. It was like what we were talking about before with some. We can't name names, but before the podcast when we were talking about how people made such a big production of everything. So it's like, all I'm asking you to do is go to the property and remove some weeds off the front lawn. We don't need to meet. We don't need to, you drive by, you tell me how much it's going to cost. We don't need to meet and talk about, give me an estimate and then whatever. Just go remove the weeds and I'll pay you a fair price, So, but this guy liked to call me.
That's how we like to do real estate transactions, by the way. When me and Russell buy a house, we just sell us the house. We'll give you a fair price. It's fine. We'll compensate
what are you going to charge? What are you going you're not going to charge me $1,000 because that's retarded. But I don't think I can say that word. That's dumb. You're not going to
mentally challenged.
You're not going to charge me $100 because that's unfair to you. So I know just go do it and then just charge me a fair price and it'll be fine. But anyway, he liked to make a big production out of everything. So he's calling me. I don't remember what, let's talk ad nauseum about some landscaping removal of weeds for a half hour. So I'm like, dude, I can't talk to you right now. My basement at one of my rental properties is a swimming pool. And I was like, but hey, do you know like a plumber or someone that could come and pump this water out? And he's like, yeah, hold on, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. So my landscaper, sure enough, 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, this guy named Angel calls.
This really.
And
are you sure
Angel-
this is like this isn't some like test of your faith or something?
Do you want me to get into it? If you'll indulge me for 2 minutes, I'll explain it all.
We'll do that at the end. Because we might want to edit that
I
out.
can tell you the secret of life. I told you in the first podcast I was on, I told you how to become financially free. I can tell you the meaning of life and the secret to
You
happiness.
should have some sort of what do you call it? Where they charge you like a seminar about the meaning of life. Forget about real estate. You charge people.
I can do that, but I always think that's kind of like snake
So
oil.
Angel gives you a call.
So Angel gives me a call, and
Of
I was
course
like,
Angel gives you a call.
you are so
Of course the
appropriately
name
you are
is
so
Angel.
appropriately named. So he comes over, and again, he's a plumber with experience, whatever, and he comes over with his water. I'm explaining what the situation is. He comes over with his water pump, but then he just is like, oh, like this is a swimming pool, I don't know, 40,000 metric.
6 feet of water. How long's the house? Maybe 40 by 30 or something?
I'm not good at estimating distance.
Long.
Yeah, 40 feet long by
But
maybe
an
30,
average
35
house,
feet.
imagine the footprint of an average house, an average basement, the floor plan of an average basement, and then put 6 feet of water on top of that. And
Was there a diving board involved?
No,
No diving board.
no. And so Angel goes up, and he, like I said, I've never, experienced something like this. He never experienced something like this. He's like, oh, I got to go back and get a bigger pump. He's like, I'm not going to be able to pump out this kind of water. And meanwhile, the sump pump is the sump pump is still trying to work.
Yeah.
But the sump pump can't.
It's just
But
overwhelmed.
every once in a while, a little bit of water is spitting out from the pipe or whatever. So Angel goes to Home Depot. Excuse me, I hate Home Depot right now. Angel goes to Lowe's, and he gets a bigger water pump. But he's like, this was like 100-year flood or whatever, right? So other people in this around this area that live by that Lowe's are
all doing the same thing.
Are all doing the same thing. So he's like, I got the last complicated water pump. He's like, all the easy ones that you didn't have to attach your own pipes to or whatever, but I know how to do that. So you got the last more complicated water pump. So we're pumping out the water, and the water level's not going down, but I can tell it's working, but he's like, I'm gonna be here all night. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of exhausted. So
Peace out.
I'm going to leave. I was there for 3 hours, you know what I mean? But he's like,
3 hours.
He's like, is there, I was like, I'll send you a pizza or something, get you Uber Eats. He's like, no, I'm fine or whatever. So he just stayed there. I don't know. He said the next day, he's like, the next day he said it was drained out.
Yeah, so basically it took a whole day to drain this basement.
took a whole night.
And HVACs are ruined, right? Water heaters ruined. Somehow
the whole basement's probably total.
somehow the water went right up to where the electric panel was.
Breaker boxes.
But didn't get into the breakers, right?
It was it reached the breaker box where you'd put the fuses in.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're called. But those bottom slots were empty.
Yeah.
But if it would have gone any further, but it did reach the modem that was, on the
cable modem,
right?
yep.
So the internet was gone. It fried the modem. It fried the router. All of the Verizon FiOS circuitry was gone. It even broke the lock. The lock being submerged underwater. Angel had to kick the door in we had to break into the basement to, so I had to change the lock on the basement. Everything
Seems like
was
a minor.
ruined.
And ultimately, insurance did not pay for this because you didn't have flood insurance, correct?
That's right. So how do I make this? How do I turn, I could turn the Dallas fire into something good because I got more money for it than I could have selling it, and I couldn't sell it anyway. So how does this turn into and everything always works out? Well, if you remember, Russell, that those mechanicals in that basement, they were like 2000, 2001.
They were getting close to where they were.
Yeah,
So they were at their end of their life anyway, 20 years old, end of life. This happened in October timeframe. I'm doing my 2020 taxes right now, so I know that. So now I'm reliving this. It's like, okay, when was this capital expenditure. Oh, it was my receipts say it was October or whatever. So it was around this time frame, which is fall, which they could be without, heat or AC. It was a nice time versus let's say the furnace went out on Christmas Eve.
Yep.
Me trying to get someone out there. Now I have the mechanicals have been, now it's all brand new. They got a brand new hot water heater. They even got a little upgrade because it's like an 85 gallon instead of a 50 gallon or something. Because whatever, only the best for my tenants, right?
But you got it all fixed.
Got it all fixed. It was $14,000 in total out of pocket, but it was something that was going to have to be done eventually anyway. So now it was done in the fall, when it was the least inconvenient to my tenants. So it was kind of in this case, it wasn't like a blessing in disguise, but it was, like it could have turned out.
Could have been worse. Could have been the height of summer when it was 100 degrees, or the dead of winter when it was 20 degrees,
or Christmas time when you couldn't get, you'd have to pay double to get someone out there.
And ironically, the supply chain has had such problems that you probably got a much better deal than you would have if you'd done it.
If you did it today, there might have been a $20,000 problem.
That's why I go back to what I said when we were doing answering the questions. Always do things as soon as you can.
So the same property also
We're
had
not done yet. We're not done yet.
Yeah, we're not done. So the same property had a garage on it.
Oh, right, the fire.
And
luckily the garage is detached. So again,
detached garage, you were renting it out. How much were you getting in rent on the garage?
So when I bought the property, I inherited a garage tenant who used it as like a little workshop. And I was getting $60.
Oh, not very much. Okay. So that didn't impact your cash flow?
No, not at all.
Much.
Not at all.
But I remember this month, 6 weeks ago, pretty recent, right?
Yeah, really recent. Probably like 2 months ago.
Like, I remember you text me and you're like, oh, by the way, did I tell you?
I don't know if I told you, right.
Did I tell you? My garage burned down.
I like how such bad stuff has happened to you.
I had another
it's
fire.
Like, oh, by the way.
Right.
It's like it's gotten so bad that it's just like I had eggs for breakfast and my garage burned down.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's the thing. I most people would, like we said, would just give up. We'd say, I'm no longer going to be a landlord. This would be the straw that brought the camel's back. That happened on a Friday afternoon. The police department called me, or the fire department calls me, and they're like, there's a fire in your property. And I'm like,
I know. I'm used to this.
I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? And then he's like, well, I don't know, maybe, Monday, call the city and just make sure that they're not going to fine you because you have an unsafe structure. And, I guess call your insurance. And then, so that was a Friday, and I knew the insurance company based on their lack of responsiveness during the flood that no one was going to be answering the phone or taking down claims or whatever, on the weekend. So I was like, I didn't even go up there until Monday to check the property, to check the fire. I was just like, well, another fire, nothing I can do about this now. So I'm just going to go continue about my weekend the way I had planned. So I didn't even go up there till the Monday after. I didn't call insurance till the Monday after. So,
I mean, that's a pretty good way to take it in stride, because I know I would be stressed out. I'd want to go see it immediately. And you're like,
whatever.
I've had properties
dealt with this before. The fire, it can wait till Monday.
This whole lesson might be a lesson of the benefits of smoking weed. You seem to be pretty chill about all of this stuff. This is just the weed?
I knew Ron before he started smoking weed, and he was still pretty chill.
Right. But lately, for whatever reason, the last 2 years during the pandemic, maybe things have really escalated. It was where it's like, okay, all of this stuff, my car gets broken into 3 times. I have a flood. I have 5 psycho tenants I have to deal with.
It's like snowballing.
Tenants. I've got the pandemic. I've got this, my car gets, rammed, by the Penske truck. My car gets the guy sleeping in it. All these extraordinary events are happening. So I always say,
it sounds like we've made this up for podcast content.
Right. So
that sounds insane.
I mean, we could save it till the end, but I can tell you how I get through this mentally. But
okay. Let's get life advice from Ron.
Yeah. But but we'll save it for the end. But so then Russell can edit it out. But
yeah, so So what's the deal with the garage now? It's burned down. You're going to.
So how can I turn this? How can I call it bright siding things, looking at things on the bright side. So how can I bright side this fire or whatever? Well, I was only making $60 from that tenant anyway. So I'm not going to rebuild the garage. So one thing I could do is I could rebuild the garage. They make these prefab steel garages, $10,000. They'll deliver it on a truck and they'll put it on the slab.
But you don't want normal. You don't
That's
want regular.
boring. That's
No, that
normal.
Ron, we know Ron. He would not do that.
So how can I turn this into a benefit to me and my friends and family? Let me rebuild the garage, but let me rebuild a super disco man cave garage.
Oh, that's awesome.
Party garage. So the insurance company is going to pay to rebuild the first level. It's a one level, kind of like 2-car long garage, tandem parking garage. So the insurance company is going to pay to rebuild the first level and put a roof on it, right? So why don't I pay to put a second level on?
Yeah, marginal cost. Is
So I've already got it all. I already met with my contractor. We designed it all out. The first floor is going to be the garage where you could park a car, but when a car's not there, it's going to be the dance floor.
Put a little apartment above it.
And then I'll put a little apartment above it. And the apartment above it will have, a bar, and it'll have 4 TV screens that you could either watch, like, the combined show on, super huge 4 TVs, or if you're watching, if it's, NFL playoff season, you can go watch all 4 games. You can watch 4 games at once or whatever.
This is a benefit to me personally.
So that's how I envision that. And then the garage level will have a projector, a DJ booth, a stage. It'll be like the dance floor, and the upstairs will be more like the bar. It's going to be like your little your weekend getaway. It's going to be my little. What's that little Pierre de Terre, yeah. It's where people commute into the city. Like you just have your tiny little apartment in Paris because you don't want to commute every.
I think this is the first time someone's compared College Park to Paris.
It's the Paris.
It's the Paris of Prince George's County. Prince George's County. I'm not even sure that's true.
So, it's the Paris of Prince George's County for sure.
I'm not even sure I agree with that.
So mine's the opposite. When I'm tired of DC and there's some protest or march or something in the city, shutting down the city or whatever, I'll just go up there and escape. When you, Russell, tell me, it's a Friday night, I just want to, do something different or whatever, I give you the code, the smart key. There's a smart key lock on it. I give you the code. You go up, you hang out. Same thing for any of my other friends. If I have family visiting, people are visiting DC all the time. So if I have people visiting, I'm going to sneak a little bed in there, whatever. And then people will be able to, crash there. I have a friend that's visiting, that's, trying to get a start working in DC. That could be a place for him to until you get on your feet or whatever. So it has multiple uses.
We gotta start like some sort of Yelp page for like Club Ron. We can leave reviews.
Yeah. So right now, Prince George's County doesn't allow for ADUs. I remember calling the city because I want to know what my limits are. So I call College Park and I'm like, I want to have a super garage with a second level.
Or whatever.
She's like, garage. Yeah. She's like, hold on a second, honey. You're not going to have a super garage or whatever. And then she referred me to Prince George's County. She says we just kind of follow their laws. So I wanted to know how tall can it be? I know I can't have a stove, but can I have a refrigerator? Probably. Can I have a sink? Probably. If I can have a sink, then I can have a toilet, right? Can I have a shower? Because if I can't have a shower, then I won't hang out up there.
Yeah.
But if I can have a shower, then I will hang out up there. If they tell me I can't have a shower, then I told the contractor we'll figure out a workaround. Like, okay, we'll look into a camp shower or something else. But once we get a cold water lead in there, we can always do on-demand hot water heaters under the sink and at the shower, 4 gallons or whatever.
But it's an incredible way to take this.
A negative.
What's a terrible negative event, turn it into positive, as you've done time and time and time again.
So always think about, don't think of, take a day to grieve. And whatever, and pity yourself and go eat some ice cream or whatever to make yourself feel better. But then you got to pick yourself up, like I say, doing things sooner, like we've been talking about this podcast, doing things sooner is better. So get this all done, as fast as you can. You pick yourself up and just move forward. Like, how are you going to get through this? You're going to call the insurance company. You're going to get a contractor, and now it's turned into a fun project. A fire, something that could be mentally devastating to most people and their real estate career. I'm talking to my contractor and the electrician and stuff, and they're like, oh, yeah, we could put arcade games in here and whatever. And I'm like, yes, exactly. This is what I want you to think about. It's like, be thinking of the craziest thing you can think of. The only thing that's off the table is a bowling alley, because I found out they're like $100,000. But other than that, let's think about...
Do you have room for a bowling alley?
Of course you were pricing out a bowling alley.
Right.
Do you have room for a bowling alley?
Well, Alan, the previous owner, the seller, he's like, you have that big, long driveway. You could just put the bowling alley there. Or whatever.
Actually...
But be thinking about... Don't think, woe is me, this is horrible.
Think about how much fun you can get out of it.
Think about the bright side. Okay, how can I...
make my life more fun.
Right. How can I benefit from this? How can I turn this fire into a benefit? So how it's going to happen, the end result of this, I guess it's kind of like I've always said in my life, everything always works out. But at the time, you don't think that. But then 6 months later, when it all worked out, I'm like, oh... I wish I would have known that at the time. So I'm going into all of these things now knowing that everything's going to work out. So if you know that everything's going to work out, like if you could talk to the future, or future you could tell you, hey, everything's going to be cool. Don't stress about it. So I'm not stressed about this stuff because I've been through it all before. I've been through worse. And, I'm just trying to figure out how can I make this an opportunity. How can I benefit from this? I could eventually, like I was saying, the city and the county right now don't allow for ADUs. But 20 years from now, when housing is at a premium and there's a housing shortage of Prince George's County, they're going to allow for ADUs. I mean, they're going to follow like Montgomery County and DC already did. So eventually, I'll be ready for that. You know what I mean? I'll have my little ADU all set up or whatever because I'll have the super garage. So I could rebuild with a boring prefab steel garage that you park a car in and I rent it out for $60 a month. Or I could create this super garage that eventually might provide cash flow for me. At the very least, it's going to be an awesome place for me to hang out on the weekends when I think DC is played out. And maybe it could be...
And make that long trip from Columbia Heights to College Park.
Right.
That whole 15 minutes.
But now that trip will be worth it because I'm going to my super garage. So, it's perfect.
Awesome. All right, so we're a little past the 1 hour mark.
This is my favorite episode we've done.
Yeah, this is
just great.
That's great. We're gonna have Ron on for multiple future episodes because Ron is so entertaining.
This is my favorite episode. All right.
Anyways, listen for us in 2 weeks. I think not sure who we're having on, but we have some ideas. Anyways, if you want to reach out to Ron, Jack, or myself, email us at info@dcrealestatepodcast.com.
Thanks for listening to the DC Real Estate Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to contact the hosts, reach out to them at info@dcrealestatepodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you access your podcasts.